Hello, everyone. I thought I would review the movie Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, this is not primarily a movie review channel, but I do like to talk about other artistic mediums, such as cinema and music, every once in a while, just to shake things up. And, well, I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, far more so than I am a Star Wars fan, because I'm a huge fan of old classic movies from the 30s and 40s, and Indiana Jones, the franchise, tried to recapture that in the 80s. And so I'm a huge fan of Indiana Jones. And I have mixed feelings about this film. And whenever I have mixed feelings about it, I usually need to see a film again, maybe two or three times, to truly know how I feel. But I just got back from seeing it at the theater, and of course I had to avoid. I saw it today, Sunday, and I had to avoid spoilers like the plague. Luckily, I was able to do that for the most part somehow, even with all the information today. But again, there are things that I liked about it, things I didn't like about it, and I'll start with the things that I liked. For one, I loved the opening sequence for the most part, the flashback from the 1940s. Um, of course, there you have a de-aged Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford, and you can tell, yes, sometimes that he's de-aged and that it's CGI. But I thought it worked for the most part. I thought the best action sequences definitely took place during that sequence. I thought his fight with the Nazi was very exciting, and the most tension I felt in the film was during that sequence. And eh, now, getting to the rest of the film, I really liked the exploration of Roman and Greek history because in terms of like ancient history and cultures, the Greek and Roman periods are really my favorite period, even more so than ancient Egypt. I mean, I like ancient Egypt as well, but there's something about Greek and Roman culture that has always fascinated me, and I knew quite a lot about it. So there were a lot of things that they talked about in references that some people might not understand that I understood. And so, in that regard, I thought it was very compelling. Them talking about Archimedes, and the dial that they found at the bottom of the sea, which had kind of an almost primitive type of computer system that 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 was highly advanced for the period, and there were just a lot of things history wise that I really enjoyed. I loved a lot of the references. I thought that the villain I thought was a good solid villain. No, Matt Nicholson, I think is his name, is the same guy who was the villain in Casino Royale. And I thought he was a very solid and compelling villain for the most part. I thought he gave a good performance. He's good in most of the things that he stars in. And I also thought there were some touching and heartfelt moments, in the film. Of course, this is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the film yet, then I would advise you to turn off the review now and then come back perhaps when you have seen it. But there were several heartwarming moments that I liked. For example, when it's revealed that Indy lost his son Mutt from the previous film in Vietnam, and that he and Marion are separated, and he explains why, and that was a very heartwarming and touching sequence. And then, of course, at the end, when he and Marion are reunited, and they kind of pay homage to the scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Marion is talking to Indy about him being hurt, and she says, "Where doesn't it hurt?" And he says, "Here, here," and she kisses him, kisses him, and then in various places on his body, and then they end up embracing. And but it's reversed here where he's kissing Marion, and they finally embrace and unite, and then you hear her theme playing, and I thought that was just a very touching and poignant moment, and I thought that really brought the film home, at least for me. I thought it was very emotionally impactful, and I also liked. I didn't think that I would be a huge fan of the time travel sequence, but but I actually was because the fact that he went back in time to Rome, I mean to ancient Greece, and a time period that I'm very much interested in. It seemed to be more natural than if he had gone back to the 30s, which I think would have been more sci-fi like. And so I enjoyed that aspect of the film. So now let me talk about the things that I didn't like. Well, I didn't like. I thought that the character of Helena, for the most part, because I found her to be. Now I didn't think she wasn't as bad as I thought she was going to be, but I found her to be very snarky and quippy, and I didn't care about her as a person. She could have been anybody. She was more like a plot device than anything else, and so I didn't care about her in the film. And another thing that I didn't like is that I didn't like the fact, because in most, I know that Harrison Ford is 80 years old and that he can't do the things that he used to do, but at the same time, I felt that there was a lack of tension in the film. And because in most Indiana Jones films, there's a sequence where Indiana Jones gets into a brawl with some character and he's nearly killed, and there was something like that at the beginning, but in the present day, old Indiana Jones, there's no sequence like that. I felt there was a lack of tension, especially because I enjoy action sequences that are one on one, that are personal, and I feel like there should have been a scene like that in the movie. But instead, you got a lot of car chases, or Indiana just shooting a random bad guy and him falling dead, and I felt that there wasn't a lot of personal tension in the film, and especially since the film seemed to be implying that he was going to have some kind of physical confrontation with the henchman, the Southern henchman of the main Nazi, but that never really happened. And so I felt there was a lack of tension in the film. There should have been at least to me one-on-one fist fight with Indiana Jones and someone else, but there never really was. So I was disappointed by that. And I also thought the film didn't reach its full potential thematically, because I thought that in most films, in most Indiana Jones films, or the better ones, he has to struggle with making a choice. He has to grow as a character, and they came close to that at the end where he's thinking about staying in the past and he's having to choose between the past and the present. But then Helena knocks him out, and then he ends up in the present again. And I'm thinking, it would have been better if he had made that choice himself, because then it would have demonstrated him growing more as a character. I think it would have been a more poignant moment. And so, but overall, so again, I have mixed views, but overall, I think it's a good film. Certainly better than a Kingdom of Crystal Skull, which I don't think is a bad film either. I wouldn't say that it is leaps and beyond superior, but it is a better film overall. And because a lot of people forget there are really only two really perfect, really good Indiana Jones films. That would be The Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because even Temple of Doom has some sequences that I don't care for, such as him jumping out of an inflatable boat and a plane and surviving, and then Willie Scott being somewhat annoying. Which again, those are nitpicks. And Temple of Doom is a solid film overall, but it's less than perfect. And but this film isn't as bad as some people have been suggesting. I think some people are going into this hating the film because there are some online reviewers, for example, who they've been saying for months or even years that the film is going to suck. So now that the film hasn't really sucked, they can't go back and say, "Well, I was wrong," because they need to stir up hate in order to secure a viewership. But again, I think the film is very mixed, and I have a nuanced perspective on it. Overall, if I had to rate it, I may give it, 4 out of 5 stars or something like that. Even though I don't like rankings, maybe I'll feel differently one way or the other when I see it again in a few months when it comes out on home video. But those are my current thoughts on the film.